Alright, looks like we're all set up here, or I'm set up. I don't know why people say that sometimes, we, us. So this one is going to be a reading of this document on the left here, novel biophysical information transfer mechanisms. This is basically a little bit of jargon in reference to psychokinesis, telekinesis. This document also is mainly research and a report on what the Soviet Union, now called Russia, was developing, and this includes what they call remote sensors. So this also includes what they call remote sensors, and that's actually technology that is designed to pick up on people who are exhibiting these traits and these characteristics, as the CIA would call them, or SRI or the Monroe Institute might call them, potentials, talents, adepts, and things like that. I've included the contents into the description, and it's 10 chapters. I'm not going to go through that all in this one video here. There's a lot to read, and some of it has some equations and things like that, and I'll be skipping over some of that stuff. And then on the right here, I have two documents, and one is called Paraphysics R&D Research, the Warsaw Pact, and then I have what I guess is just kind of a pull sheet of 3 pages of something else, and I'm not sure what it's actually attributed to, but it was in the Crest Library associated with, as you can see, parapsychology or paraphysics in, not sure why my mouse is going off like that, so let's give this 1 second here. I'm not sure why my box is dragging and lagging. So the Paraphysics research in the Warsaw Pact. Now I'm not sure what the, let me just double check what, get caught up on what the Warsaw Pact is. I'll close that up. I should be okay. So let's just look at the Warsaw Pact, see if there's anything on Wikipedia. The Warsaw Treaty Organization, officially the Treaty of Friendship, Cooperation, and Mutual Assistance, commonly known as the Warsaw Pact, was a collective defense treaty signed in Warsaw, Poland, between the Soviet Union and 7 other Eastern Bloc socialist republics of Central and Eastern Europe in May 1955, during the Cold War. The Warsaw Pact was a military complement to the Council of Mutual Economic Assistance, the regional organization of the socialist states of the Central and Eastern Europe. The Warsaw Pact was created in reaction to the integration of West Germany into NATO in 1955, per the London and Paris conferences of 1954. The Warsaw Pact establishes a balance of power or counterweight to NATO. There is no direct military confrontation between them. Instead, the conflict was fought on an ideological basis and in proxy wars. Both NATO and the Warsaw Pact led to the expansion of military forces and their integration into the respective blocs. Its largest military engagement was the invasion of Czechoslovakia in '68, with participation in all Pact nations except Albania, Romania, and East Germany. So Romania and East Germany have more esoteric and exoteric, I guess, in some capacities, relationships with telekinesis, ESP, and some of the more occult aspects of these this type of research. I just want to see what other. Okay, so republics of the USSR is Georgia. That was recently annexed about 4 years ago. Lithuania, Latvia, Ukraine, Allied States, Afghanistan, Albania, China, Congo. Okay, so we can see, I mean, if you're familiar with anything that's contemporary today in the news, what's going on and what the President of the United States has sort of been going through in terms of the media, or against the media, or with the media. As the article says, this is the anti-NATO organization. And we'll just close this up now. So for this Warsaw Pact and what we just saw, and just obviously this wasn't referenced inside of that Wikipedia article, but they're basically sharing with Russia, and let me read this document in the middle, and I'll make it the largest one on the right now, which is Top Secret Ruft Zarf Umbra. USSR research on paranormal phenomena, i.e. telepathy, ESP, was begun in the early 1920s by a few researchers. It was interrupted at the start of World War II and was reinitiated in 1959. Established scientists from various disciplines entered this research field at the time. Shortly after, the scope of research was increased to include all types of paranormal phenomena, including psychokinesis. In recent years, many additional researchers have become active in the field and have begun to address a much wider range of human sensitivities, subtle electromagnetic fields. A trend toward multidisciplinary research is now emerging, which will likely accelerate the understanding of the various paranormal phenomena. Additional investments of both personnel and money will likely lead to increases in the scope of research and should be expected in the immediate future. Most of the current research on paranormal phenomena is apparently performed as an adjunct to other official duties. However, it is likely that there are some researchers involved on a full-time basis and receive government support. At least 3 and possibly more officially sponsored research groups exist in Moscow, Leningrad, and Alma-Ata. The research level has been cyclic in responding to criticism and encouragement. Through the mid-1960s, the main conflicts were over ideological issues, scientific and Marxist. That would, if we were to just translate that parentheses there, that's really what we call, or what we would call, materialistic and idealistic. Recent trends, although I mean, we have to look at what Russia went through, prior to World War II and I, and look at the religious components of those wars, as well as what China and Japan and all those countries went through as well. Recent trends indicate that serious ideological conflicts have been resolved and that the official attitudes at least tolerate, if not openly accept, such research. Open, highly visible support from prominent scientists has recently been given through official party organs. Increases in interest have been noted in a wide sector of the scientific community. Criticisms continue, but they are not as intense or frequent as during earlier periods. The party has much to gain and little to lose from properly conducted paraphysics research. Research achievements. The striving for ideological acceptance has led researchers to create a variety of new terms for their research and to emphasize theoretical explanations based on known yet to be discovered physical mechanisms. While these may lead to improved research in some areas, it could cause some possibilities to be ignored. An emphasis on application potential is also apparent. Ideological objections have usually given way in the USSR to practical considerations regardless of the controversial nature of a new idea or unusual phenomena. In the Soviet Union, research is done primarily with people who demonstrate consistently high paranormal performance ability. It is known that there is a program to screen gifted people from the general population and that training techniques are used to enhance such abilities. The data for assessing communist achievements in paraphysics research are quite limited and very little information is available from reliable researchers. That which is available usually lacks sufficient backup material. This may be due, in some cases, to lack of proper publication channels for such research, or is possibly due to potential or security or political or security factors. Although limited, the data that are available from reliable researchers are highly significant and very revealing. In 1967, the statistically most significant telepathy experiment in the history of paranormal phenomena research was done. An experiment by Kogan's group in Moscow achieved 105 out of 135 correct correlations to random selected digits from between 0 and 9. The sender and receiver or separated by a few meters to a few kilometers. Kogan's group also achieved statistically significant results in long-distance, 3,000 kilometers experiments. These experiments and others like them demonstrate the basic communication potential of paranormal abilities. Similar experiments probably have been repeated in the Soviet Union since the communication application is a known USSR research goal. Additional experiments carried out from submarines, space, or command and control locations, perhaps involving simple codes, have probably already been done to explore practical value of paraphysical phenomena. The application of similar paranormal channels for information access, i.e., in an intelligence role, has usually not been overlooked by the Warsaw Pact countries. In addition to communication, other experimental results indicate that some people can generate unusual energetic field effects which interact with sensitive devices and material objects. Certain people can induce desired reactions, physiological, ideomotor, in other people, and some individuals have unusual sensitivity to subtle electric, magnetic, or electromagnetic fields. The application of such energetic phenomena to induce certain types of responses in others might be considered by Warsaw Pact countries, although the effectiveness of such influences, if any, on unwitting people is unknown. There is also evidence that sensitive interrogation devices are being developed that respond to subtle paranormal effects. Research in paranormal phenomena reported by some of the Warsaw Pact countries is considered unreliable. However, improvements are expected and the scope will probably be broadened in the future. This research could provide clues for explaining other unusual paranormal abilities such as telepathy and could indicate ways of enhancing such abilities for wider practical use. It is also possible that certain adverse influences will be discovered that would have military potential. Conclusions. During the past few weeks, worldwide research on paranormal phenomena has increased, although most is of questionable value or is difficult to evaluate. A few experiments are extremely significant and are generally repeatable. Some of the research in paranormal phenomena in the USSR is significant, and some basic applications conceivably have occurred. Increased scope and diversity of research in the Warsaw Pact countries and the pursuit of various application options will probably continue. Due to the multidisciplinary nature of such research, increases in theoretical understanding of various unusual paranormal phenomena will probably be achieved. Something's confidential, and that says the source, U.S. Air Force Foreign Technology Division analysis. For further information, contact DIA Project Officer. So before I go any further, right, let's note that that's the U.S. Air Force and that's the DIA. And what's more important is this right here. Again, this is the NSA. So this is the CIA obtaining, for some reason or ever, maybe just to program sharing or whatever, however they receive this. This is the NSA document, and we know that this is from 1959 or thereabouts. And the CIA's actual experimentation aren't on the books until the 70s. And I noted in the previous video that the NSA was already working on countermeasures and things of that nature. So I think a couple key takeaways within the first few minutes of this stream is that obviously there was, when they say that there are there's opposition within the country, that has always come down to, in the research that I've done so far, is even with even the U.S. military saying as much, is that it's religious people, you know, crying demons and injecting superstition in place of human innate ability, right, or anything like that. This is the full, looks like the Warsaw Pact. It's, if you can see the little bar here on the side, that indicates how many pages are here, and there's just a lot. So I'm not going to go through that. You can check out this document number is in the, again, another NSA document, but these document numbers are referenced in the description, and you can go ahead and read that if you're interested. this isn't just about psychic activity or anything like that. This is the full pact. It's probable and most likely that this was an excerpt or some sort of review after the fact of what was included in here, and that we will find this type of commentary somewhere within this document as it relates to the pact itself. I'm not familiar enough with why NATO and the Warsaw Pact and all that stuff started, but we saw on the Wikipedia page that there was a lot of Eastern European countries involved that have, by the 70s and 80s, were being disrupted. They were all being disrupted with some sort of civil war and infiltration, or there was some sort of political, or what we were told. It's what we're told on the news, right? I don't have any confirmation of any of that. But that looks like, there's a correlation there somewhere. It has to be, because it seems like every country that was on the hit list of research for this stuff has gone through some sort of fundamental change within the past 20 or 30 years. And all this research preceded it within 10 to 15 years prior, if we look at it overall. I'm just checking my screen here for lags, because I'm getting a little bit of lag here, so I'm going to stop for 1 second and just clean up the RAM. So this novel biophysical information transfer mechanism, the content section here is section 1, abstract, section 2, introduction, overview, and conclusions, section 3, application of advanced statistical theories to novel biophysical information transfer. Again, that's psychokinesis. Number 4, electrostatics of telekinesis. Number 5, remote physiological sensors. And number 6, sensitivity of human subjects to magnetic fields. Number 7, biophysical information carrier mechanisms. Number 8, miscellaneous observations. Number 9, speculations on the nature of Soviet laboratories investigating novel biophysical interactions. And then 10 recommendations for the future in development. And again, I have to, without painting this stuff with a negative lens, it's hard not to presume that whatever wars or whatever things have occurred were somehow related to this as well. And the fact that we have what even their own scientists within these documents have referenced as electromagnetic pollution occurring, and microwave weapons. It's funny in this document here, it's not funny, I shouldn't say, I got to stop you saying that phrase. Here they say that people can be affected by other people, meaning someone can use telekinesis or some sort of mental phenomena to evoke biological stimuli of someone else's body. And then we also have heard, I would say within the past 10 years, and read online mostly, of novel to us, but apparently in development for many years, weapons and tools that the Army and military have used in terms, the voice of God one is pretty well known in terms of the conspiracy circles, as well as some old videos of alleged spies or inventors who worked for the spy agencies, and they created weapons that could, affect people from a distance using microwave, electromagnetics, and things like that. And since we see the countermeasure on that previous document, the cryptological aspects of ESP, which is again another NSA document, not a CIA document, but those documents specifically stating that stress, war theater, ionization, both positive and negative, and atmospheric changes inhibit, perturb, and in some cases cause depression in people. They just have a ton of effects on people. And if the whole idea was to deter the populace from being able to use their abilities, their innate abilities, then, let's take a larger perspective and zoom out a little bit here. And again, let's reference contemporary news as well. where we hear a lot of, whether you believe it's fake news or not, or let's say news and content that independent researchers and writers are doing online. There's a lot of rhetoric written about the breakup of the family and disassociation, and there's a lot of research saying that the usage of the internet itself for prolonged periods makes people antisocial and things like that too. But what we're also seeing here is that the technology itself, whether that effect was intended or not, unfortunately I'm leaning towards an intended effect. It's clear that a lot of this stuff could be the result of the cognitive dissonance that all of us at one time or another has suffered or experienced, or things like outbreaks and anger and stuff like that. I mean, I've had a few episodes myself. Once about, I think it was about 3 years ago, on the phone with somebody, and although it was over a financial dispute, it makes me question a little bit. Not to say that I wasn't already pissed off about the situation overall, but I mean, we have to dig a little bit deeper into what these sensors are doing, why they're evaluating people. Again, the Warsaw document, the Zarf Umbra document that I just read, they clearly said they were looking for gifted people. In old Germanic translations, gifted actually means cursed. It translates to sort of like cursed or sickened, and it's possible that, I mean, let's go real broad here, that the religious component, whatever power it has, whatever power it still has, whatever it had back then, whatever it may have been trying to do. Let's look at the Tower of Babel and Babylon, and what we have for reference in those documents, and what we often hear a lot of religious people cite, as some sort of just breakdown of human decency. You might be able to make a correlation with psychic phenomena amongst people, even low-level versions of telepathy, where some people would technically be possessed, but not by demons, right? They would be experiencing either a more what I just call psychic war driving, or someone who's just a more powerful projector of their mental emotions or whatever, but someone who's really just transforming society by their mind. And that's quite possible, I think, with this research too, if you believe any of it. It's worth noting that the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, even the way the newspapers were written, the way educational materials were written, they were not these exacerbated, exaggerated, I don't know, bait, right? I'll just call it bait. They weren't bait to pull anybody in. And people weren't as strung out on wars, concerns, and things like that. That entire, I think it's called the Golden Age, right? The Golden Age of Western science occurred around that period. Is it a far stretch to say that there's some sort of religious fundamentalist control or influence that sort of brought us in this direction now? Or is it a stretch to say that it was a militaristic approach to keep things secret? I don't know. I mean, you can take it to any spectrum. You can take it to any sort of whatever lens is that you sort of view the world through. If you're a devoutly religious person, if you are into esoteric and exoteric knowledge sets and mastery school type stuff, or you're a scientist, a hardened scientist doing research, any extreme of that field or that mindset could lead, is always going to lead to the same thing, where control, right? Let's reel back everything as much as we can it's gotten out of hand, and we're gonna put a cap on everything and just keep everybody at an even level, right? We're gonna the spikes and the waves that happen in human invention and thoughts and emotions and the cycle of evolution, we're going to flatten that line out a little bit. And the best way to do that is to remove everybody's ability to connect empathetically, sympathetically, telepathically, and keep them busy doing other things. Again, that's referenced as well, boredom or giving tedious and remedial tasks to people who or puzzling, like puzzles. That's I've done a little, not research, I shouldn't say research, but a few of the things that I've read with regards to projecting Masonry into the Freemasonic culture in a negative light is that a lot of it's just riddle after riddle after riddle to keep you going, and it's always just going to be another layer of riddles, and that's quite possible as a psychological control mechanism, right? That today we would call it a psychological operation or a psyop, but it's quite possible that that whole keep you down the rabbit hole, it's always going to be an endless rabbit hole. It's like your choice to stop climbing down the rabbit hole, because as long as you want to keep going down there, as long as you want to keep expending your energy on solving puzzles or trying to decipher stuff or not really being able to grasp what it is that you're deciphering, if there's even a reason to decipher it or some sort of underlying secret, right? Then you're going to, that energy harvesting is also an old esoteric occult practice as well. So, and maybe what we're talking about here is something that references the notion that sometimes people mention it. I haven't heard a lot of people mention it, but the idea that the gods disappeared because people stopped believing in them, right? And I know that that's been said before in one way or another, but the idea that if the belief and the emotional investment and the mental investment in ideas and belief systems starts to dwindle among the populace, then the idea itself, that God, would disappear as well. And to me, that really just comes back to what we're looking at right now, which is psychic and telepathic phenomena, where it's a manifest destiny type of thing. And instead of being able to manifest each individual destiny or to, operate under your own agency or to develop your own sort of social and moral standing, that line of evolution has been flattened so that there's no more spikes, and the entire idea of threat and fear is now a government program in order to, I guess we would say, I guess cull is still the best word, is to cull both, call the people that are spiking in one direction and call them call the people that are spiking in other directions into various, right? It's actually a very Christian term. It's shepherds. It's shepherding, right? It's fishers of men, and that's what they'll do with fear and all this kind of stuff. So whatever recruitment mechanisms that the Czechoslovakia, Russia, and Ukraine and all these countries had and developed in the 30s and 40s, and that the NSA had before the CIA, and that the CIA then brought to the DIA, who apparently already had this information in one fashion or another. There's a bit of a cluster there. There's definitely a hidden hand of control and manipulation, and or a breeding pen, if you will, right? The fishers of men or the shepherds. So let me just get on to this report here without going too more into that. I know that can be kind of heavy, especially if you're listening to this for the first time or even seeing this kind of material and for the first time. But I left the introduction or the abstract here on the screen, so if you've already read it, I apologize if you don't want to listen to me read it now. This report presents the results of a review of Soviet research on the biophysics of parapsychological processes. The reviewers centered their attention on novel Novel Biophysical Information Transfer, NBIT in parentheses, mechanisms. The body of the report treats Soviet application of statistical theories, research done on electrostatics, the development of remote sensors, hypothesized carrier mechanisms, human sensitivity to magnetic fields, and performance training to improve NBIT. Speculations are made with respect to the Soviet research organization and as to the direction of the future R&D. Conclusions are drawn concerning Soviet progress in understanding and applying NBIT mechanisms. So I think that abstract, that paragraph there, sums up what you're going to find in this document. I would encourage you to you can just Google this number or copy and paste it from the description in the video here, which it's listed right there. All three, or all 10 rather. And I'm going to read this just so that there's, I might cut this out from this existing video here and just make a new video series out of it. So the introduction. This document presents the results of a study effort conducted under contract number XG-4208 parenthesis 54-20 parenthesis 75S with an asterisk. The purpose of the study was to review Soviet research literature concerning the biophysical aspects of parapsychology. The body of this report presents salient features of the study. It is assumed that the readers have a background understanding parapsychology. In addition, it is assumed that the reader also is familiar with the questions posed by physical, physiological, biological, psychological, and mathematical approaches to this topic. A distillation of the relevant background material can be obtained from a review of this field presented in Biophysical Aspects of Parapsychology, AIRESEARCH Report, number 75-11096, January 20th, 1975, which was prepared in response to the RFP for this study. The technical team utilized in this study and their disciplines are listed below, and those names are in the credits, although I'm not sure if, yeah, AJ is, yes. So overview. The great bulk of the papers reviewed during the study were found to be speculative, unscientific, and sensationalistic, much like the parapsychological literature of the West. There is one big difference, however, between this type of literature in the USSR and the US. The Soviet literature almost invariably shows interest in the physical and physiological mechanisms. An example is the interest in psychoenergetics, bioplasma, and psychotronics. The term psychotronics was coined by a French journalist after the analogy with electronics, bionics, nucleonics, and others. The Czechs have adopted the term to replace parapsychology. The Russians have devised their own term, psychoenergetics. These new names were chosen to give the field of study an air of scientific or technological respectability. A fundamental question remains: does the name imply a basic difference in the approach, and, if so, what effects can be expected from it? Judging from the available literature, the name does imply a difference in the approach of the Russian and Czech investigators from that of most Western parapsychologists. Some of the differences are outlined below. Okay, so J.B. Rhine is mentioned in here, and you can look at the Rhine Institute in addition to the Monroe Institute or SRI. I think let's go back to the table of contents and look at what, we'll jump forward here. Let's look at remote sensors, so that's 4-1. Apologies for the scrolling. Take a minute to, oh, that's interesting, hold on here. Yeah, so while this introductory paper kind of mocks everything that's written in here, like look at this one here. So also, if a very low frequency VLF carrier wave is important in the parapsychological communication channel, a study of these frequencies would be beneficial. I mean, this is pretty much on par with everybody's greatest fear right now as it regards to radio, microwave, 5G, 2G 6G, whatever you want to call it, an electromagnetic radiation. But let me keep going to 4.1 and let's look at what these remote sensors are. Let's read this one too. So 4.1, right? Electrostatics of Telekinesis. According to the published reports, there are several investigations of telekinesis, i.e., moving material objects without touching them, that have occurred at various times and places in communist bloc countries. In work done in Leningrad by Vasilyev and his associates, I've mentioned a few of these names already in other videos. Nina Kolegina, also called Nelja Mielova, exhibited remarkable psychokinetic ability. Benson Herbert, Milan Reisel, Zdeněk Rejdak, and Viktor Adamenko, among others, have discussed or commented on Miss Kolegina. There's some typos in here, feats. In Moscow, Adamenko worked with another subject, Alla Vinogradova, who is more skilled in telekinesis than Nina. Benson Herbert and others also have reported some of the work of Julius Kremensky of Bratslava, who moves hanging mobiles. That's something like, I guess, like in a baby's room when they're, above the crib. As telekinetic subjects, the women seem to be superior to the men. Vinogradova and Kolegina are said to be able to move objects on a table top weighing as much as 100 grams. Adamenko has advanced an explanation for observed phenomena of telekinesis that is more interesting psychologically than physically. In the article, Some Problems of Biological Electrodynamics and Psychoenergetics, he theorizes that the physical force causing the objects to move is due to static electric charges on the objects and electrical fields generated by the subject. It can be shown, as discussed subsequently, that electrostatic forces can indeed be strong enough to produce some of the effects reported. Anyone living in dry climates is quite familiar with the electrostatic forces. Static electricity discharges from the finger when one walks across the room to the light switch, and articles of clothing stick together and crackle with corona discharge when removed from the gas clothes dryer. So yeah, everybody's probably familiar with that. That might reference also some of the things I've learned in doing my own session work, that there's actually a market for clothing and apparel that is meant to reduce the electromagnetic pollution that we all experience for people who are sensitive. And I haven't done a lot of research into it, but the few websites that I found selling those materials, it's really not within the price range of anybody who has to work 5 to 7 days a week. It's expensive stuff, including things like drapes above your windows and covering your windows, blankets, things covering your bed, and hats, clothes, pants, and stuff like that. The concept of a conductor at the ground potential near a charged dielectric surface. So here they're just doing a two-dimensional drawing. Oh, that's interesting. So they have a way of showing how the field may project onto the object. I doubt that there's any actual material analysis in here whereby they're actually doing the research into what the material is made out of that is affected, but based on other research and other papers that I've read already, it's quite possible that we have things like plastics and graphite and things like that have developed that are not susceptible to electromagnetic static or mental influence. I don't see anything else going into that's worth reading right now. Okay, so here's the remote sensors. Remote physiological sensors. A remote sensor is an instrument for measuring a physiological response on the human body without the use of electrodes or other means of contacting the body. Okay, so that is literally a remote sensor. That is somehow the human body or a population of people being saturated with some sort of energetic field in order for another person or a group of people to monitor the exposition or the distribution or the appearance of psychic abilities in someone. In the literature reviewed, there are references to one or more remarkable remote sensors developed by Dr. Gennady Alexandrovich Sergeyev. Yeah, Sergeyev, so I guess maybe that's his whole name. It is claimed that one of these instruments will measure the electrocephalogram of a person at a distance of 5 meters. The instrument is classified and no credible description of it is available. Only allusion to its existence. One must keep in mind that there is reason to doubt the Russian claim. If the instrument is to register the EEG, it must remotely sense the electromagnetic field associated with the EEG potentials. Those potentials are typically of the order of tens of microvolts. American investigators have measured EEG signals with electrodes placed a few centimeters from the head. These electrodes sensed the electric field generated by the brain. David Cohen has measured the magnetic field associated with the EEG by means of a search coil several centimeters from the head. At larger distances from the head, the electrical and magnetical EEG fields become drowned in noise. The following discussion is a speculative attempt to guess the operating principles of the instrument. Let's just stop there. So remember that this is, I shouldn't go back to the top. I don't want to make anybody dizzy, but this is the 60s. So even if this author or these authors don't think it's credible, they go right into speculating how it might work, and they've also shown that they themselves can do it in a lesser effect or to a lesser effect. Now, again, this is, I believe this document is dated earlier than what is known as Kirlian Photography. We'll go ahead and take a look at that. And there's some nice images there. It's exactly what you think it is. And this was developed or brought into the CIA around the early 70s, I believe. And then there was another research group, I think, called Mankind Research Unlimited. And they were out of DC, and they were tasked with this very research here from the Warsaw Pact, and also being able to monitor people. So go ahead and check that out if you have a minute, and you can look at the article, but obviously these visuals should give you enough. And in the previous video, just before this one, the last live stream, I mentioned the Aura cameras that I think you can buy on Amazon. So let's see. Well, there you go. Buy an Aura camera now. I don't know if that's legitimate. I don't know if that means it's a filter or something, but let's look. Aura camera for sale. Aura photo. Aura reading machine. Huh. That is not what I was expecting to find. Let's look on Amazon. Well, there you go. Okay, so let's the digital night vision monocular contains a built-in camera that captures photos and records video. Use with ambient light or in total darkness with built-in infrared illuminator. Contains magnifications up to 2 times power save photos. So it looks to me great unit for the price, would give it a 5, but the included SD card was overall a good little camera that worked well to capture the night footage I needed. Works best with either a good moon or some nearby illumination. So that's an interesting statement, because what that's basically implying is that there has to be another wave field or a light field, whether or not we can sense it with our own eye. If you have bad night vision, just because you can't see see the sky doesn't mean that the stars aren't lighting up the sky enough for a camera to pick that up. So this is basically, I could just speculate. I'm not trying to make anybody paranoid or go off on a tangent here, but I don't know, maybe the weather modification and geoengineering stuff, whereby it's basically been shown that those nanoparticulates and those materials are 100% in our food and water, on the land, everywhere, in us, in our system, in our body, that it's possible that those the aluminum, barium, strontium, and carbon black, and a few other well-known and well-documented particulates are in fact used to saturate our body and make us glow on a screen, glow and light up. Although it is unlikely that the output of such an instrument would be a direct measure of the EEG, it would provide information of interest to police interrogator, such as the strength and rate of the heartbeat, the tensing and relaxation of muscles. So it's kind of like a lie detector. In reviewing the available literature, 5 references have been found that may help shed light on the exhibits remarkable telekinetic ability, generates a pulsing magnetic field whose amplitude is not much weaker than the magnetic field of the Earth, according to measurements made with his remote sensor. Second, the reporter, writing in the journal, discusses work by Sergeyev and his students in measuring emotional states of a subject by a remote sensor. No description of the instrument is given. Yeah, this is crazy stuff to believe that we're living like this then. And if they're able to monitor it, then they're able to influence it. I just watched a video with a guy from American Intelligence Media, and he gave an anecdote during the broadcast that he had a friend in the 70s that he knew, and he was basically being told then that people could induce and incite emotional states, anger, rage, and things like that. So back then, so we have some pretty scary stuff here. Now, again, don't I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to read this without thinking we've been screwed a little bit here by some people. Well, look at that. The fact that barium titanate is used to support the silver electrodes is irrelevant to the operation of the sensor, but relevant to the evaluation of the paucity of the report. It is likely that silver-plated barium titanate slabs happened to be available to the investigators because of its piezoelectric properties. Barium has a variety of use in military weapons and instruments such as hydrophones and underwater sound detection and shock-actuated detonators for explosive devices. As previously noted, Sergeyev works in a military research development laboratory where barium would be available. It has been previously reported that much of the Russian parapsychological work to which we have access is done as an avocation by the investigators without official support or sanction. In such circumstances, the use of silver-plated barium titanate as an inexpensive and available substitute for solid silver electrodes is understandable. Other types of remote sensors mentioned in the available literature seem quite simple and conventional, so it's not like they're denying it. A tunable antenna for detecting low frequency, very low frequency, or extremely low frequency electromagnetic radiation could be used. The Russians believe both in mental telepathy and prosaic physical mechanisms for it. The most probable mechanism is electromagnetic radiation. A tunable antenna could be used in two types of experiment: trying to detect the radiation from the telepathic agent and trying to generate radiation of the right frequency to interfere with telepathic reception. Well, there you go there. A neutrino detector, a magnetic field or field gradient detector could be used. The Russians and other Eastern Europeans are greatly interested in dowsing or finding groundwater. A currently popular theory for dowsing is that the human body is sensitive to small changes, temporal or spatial, in the magnetic field of the Earth, such as might be produced by water near the surface of the ground. If the human body can generate as well as sense magnetic fields, such human magnetism might be the basis of some form of thought transference of psychokinesis. Yeah, this is this one pretty much sums it up for me here. That we're definitely in some sort of biofence, and if you're not thinking or doing what somebody wants you to think or do, they can basically zap us. I'm going to turn this off here. Where are we at here? How much time have I been running? Does it show? Alright, so this is an hour. I think that's enough for this one. Do your own research. I don't think anything else needs to be said about this. You can find these documents yourself, and you not only may have heard what I just read, but it's clear that there is more going on as it relates to vaccines and medicines and 5G and radio waves, VHF, VLF, microwave, electromagnetic radiation, scalar wave, and things like that. If I don't know how to close that off on a positive note, other than just I would, if you're keen to this stuff and you've done your own research, most likely you wouldn't be reading this or listening to this if you haven't done your own research, but this is kind of something that needs to get around. I live in a city right now where there's microwave antennas on the corner of every building, and having been in this apartment that I'm in now, at a certain floor, you know, when you're in a tall, say 40 or 50 or 60 story building, oftentimes your ears will pop once you break a certain floor level, and people will say that's air pressure, yet you know, you can go in the hallway and you're breathing just fine. If I had to go run and jog, I've never had any problems with it. I used to run up and down flights of stairs to work out and things like that as well. So what is clear to me is actually happening: the ear popping, or what's being alleged to be air pressure, is most likely that the higher I go up, the greater the frequency or bandwidth or the size of the waves that are hitting us or being projected. You know, you're sort of entering a different field, and that's a bunch of horseshit. That's just horseshit off the bat. That's terrible stuff to be doing to people. It really does make you question crime. It makes you question people's intentions, the application and use of law when it comes to certain things. But all right, I'm going to turn this off here, and I'll come back with another one in about, I might do something new tonight, but it's most likely going to be in a couple days. All right, have a good night, good morning, or good evening whenever you're watching this.